Alrighty, welcome everybody joining in here to ProfessionalQuest Breaking into Marketing. We've got some wonderful panelists here today. We're gonna just go ahead and jump in because we've only got about 30 minutes here and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I'll briefly introduce myself. My name is Madison Height. I'm the Experiential Learning Manager here in the Office of Career Services in the Costello College of Business. So if you have not been to our office yet, make sure to check us out. I'm also going to be putting the sign-in link in the chat so that you all can let us know that you were here and we can make sure that you receive any materials that we want to send out following the panel. Okay, so please make sure you do that. So we'll jump in to the questions and we'll get going here. So Connor and Greg, so if you could please share your name, your current role, where you work, and how you first broke into the world of marketing. And Connor, you can go first.
Sounds good. Hi, I'm Connor Williams. My current role is marketing and media coordinator. I work at a company called Ascend Planning and Consulting. We're a financial advising firm. My role itself kind of has a couple of components, which includes social media, website design, and also managing gifts and marketing stuff for our clients. For like kind of my breakout role in marketing. That kind of started in high school, and I worked for a company called 365 Tickets, which is like a ticketing company similar to like Ticketmaster, where I did marketing and sales and customer service.
Great, awesome. Greg, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, and my name is Greg Johnson. I'm the marketing manager here at Costello, as you can see from my background and Zoom background. So if you're on campus a lot, you may see me around. Do a lot of different things on the team, but what it really comes down to is storytelling, telling the story of Costello. Um, so I got my start. I'm actually an alumni of George Mason too, a communications major though. So communications and marketing, there's a lot of I guess crossover. So when you start looking at internships in college, a lot of them are Marcom. So that's kind of how I got my start.
Awesome. Lera, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
Yes, hello, I'm Lera Nakshun, and I'm coming from Merritt Group. We're a marketing agency. We actually do marketing and PR. We have two sides of our house here, and I'm a marketing account manager. So I oversee a lot of our client relationships. So we have clients ranging from big names like Microsoft and Samsung to smaller businesses, startups. Different kinds of companies like that. We have a cybersecurity practice, so I'm kind of on the security team. So a lot of my clients and the projects that I manage have to do with cybersecurity, AI, that sort of thing. I'm by no means an expert in those fields, but we do have a lot of SMEs and different professionals that we work with to kind of hone in on different messaging and things like that. In terms of where I got my start, so I have a media and communications degree from UMBC, and I'm probably 10 years outside of college at this point. But I did get my start in college. I was always working even in high school, and so when I entered college, I got an internship pretty quickly. Back then, I was more in the arts field, actually. So kind of got my start doing a lot of like art events, where I started interning, and then I got like a very low paying job out of that internship. Um, Basically doing a lot of like event management, but it had a marketing component to it because we were marketing a lot of those events. And then from that point on, I kind of grew and grew and grew, and eventually I made the pivot more into like the tech field and that sort of thing. So I was also at doing marketing at NASA as a contractor for about 4 years as well. And so when I got that position, I was able to kind of pivot more into the technical like sciences and more like engineering and now the cybersecurity field.
Awesome. Thank you guys. So nice to hear about everybody's backgrounds and where everybody's journey has been. Speaking of your journey, looking back, what was the most important thing that helped you land your first marketing role? And we'll go in the same order. So if Connor, you want to go ahead.
Sounds good. I think for me, some of the biggest things were definitely networking and keeping good relationships. Just looking back on like my hiring of this position, I actually was rejected from a position that I applied for a company that our firm works with, and then was recommended by that company to work for this firm, and kind of having those good relationships with the company, even though I was rejected by them, kind of led me to this role. So it's kind of great to you always want to keep the door open, even if things don't happen like they're supposed to, or like go as planned. So yeah, just circling back, keeping good relationships and networking. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I think internships were really important. And I would have these different internships, and they're largely unpaid. So if you can afford to do it unpaid, sometimes that's how you do get the best hands-on experience. You also learn about what skills you may like or that you're not as good at. And then those internships really helped me get a temporary job. So I got a temporary job at Feld Entertainment, which is associated with the Ringling Brothers Circus, Disney on Ice, monster trucks. So that name recognition of working there, even though I was doing work that, answering calls, like hearing complaints, PR line, that kind of stuff, it may not seem the most attractive, but you do that for a little bit, and then you can get your next your foot in the door for that job you really like. And then something that was also really important was for every job, I also got a letter of commendation from somebody there, one of the supervisors. So you have those references, even if it's hard to track them down later, you kind of have something good they said about you along the way.
Very similar kind of trajectory for me. I did mention earlier that I got my start in an internship out of, while I was still in college. But that being said, that was not the easiest thing for me because, I did need to make actual money. So I ended up juggling at one point, I had like 2 paid jobs and then 1 internship. And so I think the internship started out like with really low hours, so I can kind of have my foot in the door, but I was still working on these other side jobs that actually gave me a little bit of money. Um, and then when I was able to turn that internship into a job, I kind of let go of those like jobs that weren't really serving me anymore and, weren't going to necessarily get me to that next step in my career. So sometimes you have to hustle if you're able to do it, kind of try your best there. And then also I would just say, if you're in a position that you can't afford to just work for free, also think about just applying for low paying, like, or like low level associate level jobs, even while you're still in college. Um, Sometimes like if you have enough classes, you can kind of shift around your work schedule. Or they'll have those jobs that are just more part-time and you can kind of see like, ooh, I might want to be at this company doing this other job later, but maybe I can get my foot in the door as something that's like not necessarily marketing, but maybe something more admin related. And that way you can kind of just, start to mingle around and make connections and that sort of thing. For example, when I got my job as a contractor at NASA. Like my first contract over there was really, really, really low paying. And it's like wasn't your typical gig that you would think like somebody who's contracting for a big government agency would be making. But that like low paying job ended up like allowing me to get onto another contract that was much more high paying and I was able to build from there. So start small, start wherever you can get your foot in, and then see where you can go from there.
Great. Thank you all. So considering our audience here today, which are mostly all undergraduate college students, probably concentrating in marketing here in the Costello College of Business, what's one thing to you that makes an entry-level candidate or intern stand out to you?
Um, Just kind of circling back towards the internships, I think that's one of the biggest things because kind of showing the employer that you have real world experience before you're graduating is a big thing towards um, showing like how you work in the workplace and how like it kind of translates from your college work and like schoolwork and actually like doing like projects and tasks in the work place. So that's I think a really big component. Um, in addition, I would say being like versatile in your skill base, so having a lot of things you can pivot off of when doing projects is very beneficial as well.
Yeah, as someone who's currently sitting on a hiring committee, and I've sat on a couple other hiring committees too, I think what really is the difference maker sometimes is the passion somebody has. Um, so the passion for the job, the passion for the interest, the passion for marketing. So just kind of find a way to differentiate yourself because a lot of people they check the right boxes, they hit the right buzzwords, but um, do you actually care about where you're trying to work? Do you actually care about the kind of marketing you're trying to do? So I think it's kind of fitting between those lines. Um, you there are some people you see these cover letters and it's just the buzzwords. It could be a copy and paste thing. So you don't want to be a copy and paste type of candidate.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with the two gentlemen before me. Also, another thing that I think people kind of skip on in interviews that goes a really long way is just to be a good conversationalist in general. Because sometimes you'll have people that you're interviewing who just like it's like they're reciting from a script, and you kind of feel like you don't have that human connection there. And sometimes I've like I not necessarily between two people, but I was like between a few different people. And the person that makes the biggest impact is not necessarily the one that's answering all the questions like to the T with all of the right buzzwords, but they're just the ones that like maybe they made me laugh or maybe we had something in common. So like putting in little touches of your personality can really go a long way, even if you don't necessarily have the perfect response to something. And then if you're ever in an interview that you don't necessarily know the answer to a question, give your best shot. Like instead of kind of freezing on the spot, because I've been in a lot of different interviews and I've been there where I was like, oh, I don't know, like what do I say? And what had really worked for me, and then what I've noticed works like when I'm hiring people is the person actually trying to kind of give you their thought process as to how they would make a decision. Or, hey, oh, I haven't done this, but this sounds similar to something that I did do. And this is how I handled that situation. I'm sure that there's a lot of like similarities, and just show that you can adapt and learn even if you don't have the necessary skill set yet.
Great, thank you all. Our next question here for you all is, what should college students be doing right now to prepare for a career in marketing?
Just to start off, I think one of the biggest things is kind of have a portfolio or set aside some of your work from school so that you can kind of show employers what you've done, what you've accomplished, and it can be beneficial to show like what caliber of work you're going to be doing in the workforce. In addition to that, coming from like stuff that I do with my job, I think having being familiar with your like online presence or like social media and doing blog posts and postings online is definitely beneficial because in any aspect of marketing, you're probably going to be doing some form of that. And if you're not familiar with it, it's definitely something you have to be very familiar with.
Yeah, I'm being the dead horse, but I think the internships, you don't want your first experience working in the real world to be you just graduated and you're trying to apply for a job, even if it's not like a career job while you're working, get that internship experience, get your foot in the door. Also, treating the job search like it's your full-time job, even though you're going to school, of course, but keeping a resume template up to date, a cover letter. If you're thinking like federal and non-federal, maybe have two different resumes, two different kinds of cover letters up to date, just so when you see something, you're ready to move on it quickly.
Yeah, definitely agree. Again, what I would also say is if you don't have a LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn. That's, where you really can start to publish some of those posts that you may be working on and make sure that you're keeping that updated. And then even if you're full-time in school, I would start applying. If there's a job, like you don't want to start applying to everything out there. But if you see like, oh, this sounds like something I might want to do in the future, apply to jobs just to practice getting interviews. And then if you do get an interview, that talking back and forth, like you might be super nervous the first time, first couple of times. The time you're on your 10th interview, you're breezing through it. Um, and try to learn each time. Now, obviously, if there's like a company that you really want to get into and you don't want to like ruin your image and you don't want, or something like that, you want to be in their good graces, maybe save those like, bigger companies that you want to save for later in your career. Save those, put them to the side. But if there's smaller companies, go ahead and start applying and practice your interview skills. And then I'm sure like with GMU and anywhere that you might be at, like also try to find resources at your school to practice interviewing. Because it's a skill that is under taught, I think, and it can really kind of help differentiate you, the more that you do it. So yeah.
Definitely agree with that. Practice makes perfect interview. I think that's definitely true. Next question for you all is, what's one misconception about working in marketing that you wish students knew the truth about?
Just to start off, I would say one of the biggest things is, especially when you're starting out in a new role, you don't know everything. You're never gonna know all the answers. It's always great to reach out to people that you work with and collaborate and do research, and it can definitely be beneficial for you and your team.
Yeah, I think you may look at people and say that that person seems like a marketer. They have the personality for that. But marketer people who work in marketing are all different personality types, just like marketing is so many different things going on. So it takes a lot of kinds of different people to make a good marketing team.
Um, Definitely agree there. I would also say, I heard this a lot from people who are maybe outside of marketing, that they think it's just like lying to people and selling things just to make money. And I'm I'm always of the opinion that there may be marketers like that. That's not the type of marketer that I'm trying to be. But there are products out there that do deserve an audience. And what basically what we're trying to do is cultivate a community and essentially around a solution. A lot of the things that we're selling or marketing are solutions to problems that people have in their lives, right? Like I'm in cybersecurity. This is a field that is constantly evolving, very needed field, a lot of information that people just don't have. Um, and what we're trying to do is get the information out there. Now, of course, there's a lot of companies, there's a lot of competitors, there's a big marketplace for those things. And you're trying to kind of get your client to be to be the one that people choose. So you're going to talk about messaging, you're going to talk about like how to position yourself, what's your value prop, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, you're just trying to cultivate a community around a solution. And don't let somebody tell you that you're like a soulless person who is just trying to make money. Because there are people like that, but there are also really valuable products that just don't see the time of day. And we're the people that are going to kind of help propel those products to the fore, and hopefully, instill them in our culture. So yeah.
I have definitely heard that misconception, so I appreciate you clearing that up for us and all the attendees here today. So before we get to our last question, we actually have some student questions that I want to make sure that we get to answer before we wrap up our panel today. So I'm just going to go in the order that I received them here. So the first one we have here is, Connor, you mentioned having a portfolio. So what should be included in a portfolio and how long should it be?
I think it varies based on the industry that you want to go into. Some of the main things would probably be like marketing plans or ideas that you've had while either in school or in an internship. Or like if you're doing an internship, kind of show what projects you had and like how they came to fruition from like start to finish. In addition to like if you're doing any social media or like online activity, kind of show like your best work in that regard and how that was beneficial or like helped collaborate with the company you worked for.
Cool. Anybody else want to add to that before I move on to the next one? Cool. Our next question here is, if you are prior military and want to work in content creation, do you have recommendations for marketing courses to take besides social media marketing? And I guess this can be generally speaking. You don't need to know the exact courses that Mason offers.
I can kind of fill in there just because I was in the government contracting world. So there's a huge world that is not just social media marketing. A lot of like B2B, like business to business, and also B2G, business to government marketing exists around military, around defense, around aerospace. And so if you have that military background and you're a marketer, you can definitely get into government contracting. You can probably get jobs at places like Lockheed Martin. Also a lot of agencies that cater to government clients, or there's a lot of companies that want to get government contracts. Currently, we're in a kind of a state of flux with a lot of government agencies getting shut down or sized down significantly. So, but you do have that sweet spot of seeing where the dust lands. So kind of keep an eye on what government is doing, keep an eye on what defense is doing. And then see all of like the different contractors that work around those fields. There's always marketing people like that. There's always marketing jobs that those companies need. So yeah, I would take a look over there. So
Yeah.
that's not necessarily as to what courses you need to take, but just for you to start thinking about what kind of jobs you might want to tailor yourself to.
Yeah, I would just add on to that, speak with the Center for Government Contracting at George Mason at Costello. So they're really a perfect resource, and I know their doors are open and they always want to speak with students too. And they even have a student club. So they're very interested in working with people.
Awesome. Next question here is so that we've mentioned how there are different aspects of marketing that tie in to different personalities and characteristics of people. So how have you utilized your strengths to get to the position you are in now?
Um, well, for me, like I talked about doing different internships during school. So it's really kind of learning about what you're good at and also what you like, and sometimes that changes over time. I know now I've become more writing heavy with this current role. Um, so I think it's just doing different things and being having that well-roundedness that you're aware of all these different areas. But it's okay to have your favorite areas that you want to spend most of your time because you want to enjoy doing your job, of course.
Awesome. Our next student question here is, so there was a lot of discussion about doing internships to show experience. The student has interned at a financial firm, but has not done a marketing specific internship yet. So how can they leverage that experience and their marketing coursework to stand out when applying to marketing roles?
I can take it. So my understanding is that this person had an internship at a financial firm, but they want to do marketing and their degrees in marketing. That's actually very similar. I wasn't in finance necessarily, but I was in the arts for a while. And so a lot of what I was doing was like event related, or like setting up galleries, things like that. I was doing arts education work too. And I was like, I want to pivot to marketing. How do I do that? And kind of you kind of have to find the through line like what skills did you use at this like finance internship that you know is going to help, in a marketing role. And sometimes that can work to your strength because people want to hire people with dynamic experience because you now have kind of subject matter expertise in a field that's a little bit different from this one. And so you kind of piece together all of your previous experience, and it's going to shape your brain to be the person that you're going to be, right? And so if you can just find those ways to like maybe use some of that marketing terminology that you're that you're learning in your coursework, um, mixed with some of that finance and knowledge that you have, and the skills that you developed while you were there, fuse those together, and that can help you stand out in your next interview when it is a marketing position. And don't let it kind of get in the way, like, oh, I'm not a marketer or something like that. It's like there's so many people who are going to be applying to their first marketing position. So like, don't let that stand in your way. That finance experience is very good in marketing. There are a lot of ways that you can incorporate that. For example, I'm a marketing manager. I do budgeting all the time. Like I'm doing budgeting for my clients. We're proposing new projects all the time. So there's a lot of finance that goes into it, right? It's not necessarily going to be in every marketing role, but you can definitely find roles where you're using like finance skills in a marketing role. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. Next question here is there still a demand for traditional copywriting?
Yeah, I think you see a lot of people who say, "Oh, I use AI to write this," and that can give you a format of whether it's an article or a blog post or a web page. But you're always going to have to tell that story because a lot of marketing is about effective storytelling, promoting your brand. Um, so you can, uh, AI is something that you're going to have to learn to work with and use, but it's never really going to replace that creative aspect. I mean, at least not in the foreseeable future, I hope.
Yeah, I have something to add to that too. So there's definitely like the field is definitely changing with AI. And so if you're like a small startup, and you don't have a writing team, like that AI is going to be really beneficial for you and you might lean a little too much on it. But once you're working in bigger firms and maybe in agencies and things like that, your clients need really specific content. Like my clients, they want like CISOs, they want top level decision makers within some branch of Microsoft, within some product category in Microsoft. And so they're not going to be able to really use AI generated content because it's so generic and so broad that you need somebody who's going to go and interview a subject matter expert, then condense that into an article that's about 800 words, 800 to 2000 words, and have something that's really custom tailored to the audience that you're trying to reach. And so AI can do that to an extent, but they can't be as detailed as like a lot of the projects that we work on as marketers. So that's kind of my 2 cents there.
Great. All right, I have one last student question, and then I have one final question for all of you before we jump off. So I'm hoping everybody can just stay on like a couple more minutes. Our last student question here is, what is your advice for individuals who don't have any experience and are struggling to land internships? Do you have any tips for networking?
I'm just gonna start off. So one of my biggest tips that I had and was helpful when I was looking for internships is kind of looking into your natural market, and especially using LinkedIn to do this, where you want to connect with people that you already know, and like look at what positions and what companies that they work for, and see if you would be interested in doing anything related to that. And if you find companies or anybody that you know personally that you might be interested in either a role that is open in their company or just interested in the company in general, have a conversation with them. It is always helpful to gain more information and or just form a larger connection because maybe they'll think about you later down the road.
Yeah, also talk to your professors. That's something I wish I did more when I was in school. They've had jobs working outside the university. They know people. They know people to connect you with. Maybe in your dream job. So, and if not, they have great advice, and they may know somebody else who can make that second connection. So really utilize those experts you have.
Yeah, and if you can't land an internship, like just see like if there's a nonprofit or something that needs volunteers. There's always somebody like they need somebody who's going to be on their blog content. They need somebody who's like doing SEO for them, or just people who are like going in, like there could be a nonprofit that's doing this really cool work. And if you have a camera, you can like go and like take pictures for them and post it to their blog or post it to their socials or whatever, and just start like emailing, and that can always like you do that for 2 or 3 months. That's 3 months of experience, and now you can start applying for more serious internships that you're like more interested in doing. And in the meantime, you might create connections at these other organizations that might give you good references down the line. So yeah, don't undermine the power of volunteer work.
I think that's really great insight from all of you. My last question here, and I think we can just rapid fire this one. What's one piece of advice you'd give your college self about launching a marketing career?
I'll start again just because they're the same order. I'd say one of the biggest things is to start thinking about what type of company you want to work for and do your research on like the industry and kind of gain knowledge about how the industry works. And that will definitely help you when applying for positions and your knowledge base when you're starting your career.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to my last answer. Just stay after class, go to class early, talk to your favorite professors. If they did something cool with your career in their career, find out how they did that.
Yeah, I would say there's so many different fields that marketing is used in, pretty much all of them. And so now that I've been more in like the cybersecurity realm, like I always have to learn cybersecurity things, like new terminologies, and I'm like just barely scratching the surface. And so if there's a specific field that you're interested in, like start learning about it now, because even if you don't have the marketing experience, if you know a little bit about that marketplace, if you know like the terminology within that world, that'll help you as well. And with that being said, you don't have to be boxed into a specific category either. If you're like, if you're in one field and you realize I actually don't like marketing this kind of stuff, I want to be like let's say you're doing like social media marketing, you're like, I actually want to be in B2B or something like that. That's totally fine. You can make that switch. It's just a matter of like thinking strategically about how to make that switch and like what skills you're going to focus on in your current role to like then grow yourself into a different role. So you're not pigeonholed by any means, but for those first few jobs, I would kind of do a little bit more research about the field itself and then what type of marketing you're applying to.
Great, great advice from all of you. Huge thank you to our wonderful panelists and our attendees for coming to Professional Quest Breaking into Marketing today, presented by the Office of Career Services here in the Costello College of Business. Attendees, please go ahead and sign in using the link in the chat so I can send you a neat follow-up email tomorrow with information you may find helpful. So again, thank you very much, and I will follow up with you all soon. Have a good rest of your day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.